As most of us in the world know, the United States now has a kind of gulag of its own, and it's a prison system that has many of our youth, especially black and brown youth, especially young men, many young women of course, but mostly young men, who are swept up and put away, and who now actually form a kind of labor force inside the prison, so that they are very much like slaves on a plantation. Anyway, I've been very heartened by the fact that many people have been rising against this, and that the month of October of 2014 was designated as a month dedicated to rise up against mass incarceration. And two of the people who did so much work and so much inspiring of this movement are Carl Dix of the Revolutionary Communist Party and Cornel West, who is a theologian and also a revolutionary Christian. And these two men have managed to, get themselves together and to take a stand and to inspire people to join together, whatever their differences, in order to try to move the system away from killing our children. So I wrote this poem in honor of these two people, but also in memory of all of the lynched people that have, been destroyed in the United States, including, I've been thinking about this a lot, including the parent, the father of Celie in The Color Purple. I was thinking how another way of writing that story for film would have been to open the film with the lynching of Celie's father, because the big question that I've always had about lynchings is what happens to the children of people who are lynched or people who are assassinated. And I could go on and on about all the people that I have personally, felt close to, like Che Guevara and his children, Martin Luther King Jr., his children, Malcolm X, his children. But in any case, this is the poem. It's called Gather, and it encourages us to gather wherever we can and to stand with each other against this huge force that has been trying to basically destroy our spirits and harm our bodies ever since we got here, and actually before we got here, before we even left Africa. Gather. It is still hard to believe that millions of us saw Eric Garner die. He died with what looked like a half-dozen heavily clad policemen standing on his body, twisting and crushing him, especially his head and neck. He was a big man, too. They must have felt like clumsy midgets as they dragged him down. Watching the video, I was reminded of the first lynching I quite unintentionally learned about. It happened in my tiny lumber mill town before the cows were brought in and young white girls on ornate floats became dairy queens. A big man, too, whom my parents knew, he was attacked also by a mob of white men in white robes and hoods and battered to death by their 2x4s. I must have been a toddler, overhearing my parents talk and mystified by pieces of something called 2x4s. Later, building a house, I would encounter the weight, the heaviness of this varying length of wood and begin to understand. What is the hatred of the big black man, or the small black man, or the medium-sized black man, the brown man, or the red man, or the yellow man, in all his sizes, that drives the white lynch mob mentality? I always thought it was envy. Envy of the sheer courage to survive and ceaselessly resist conformity, enough to sing and dance or orate or say in so many outlandish ways, "You're not the boss of me." Think how many black men said this. "Cracker, you're not the boss of me," even enslaved. Think of how the legal lynch mob not so long ago, tore Nat Turner's body in quarters, skinned him, and made, quote, money purses from his, quote, hide. Who are these beings? Now we are beginning to ask the crucial question. If it is natural to be black and red or brown or yellow, and if it is beautiful to resist oppression, and if it is gorgeous to be of color and walking around free, then where does the problem lie? Who are these people that kill our children in the night, murder our brothers in broad daylight, refuse to see themselves in us as we have strained over centuries to see ourselves in them? Perhaps we are more different than we thought. And does this scare us? And what of, for instance, those among us who collude? Gather, come see what stillness lies now in the people's broken hearts. It is the quiet force of comprehension, of realization of the meaning of our ancient and perfect contrariness, of what must now be understood and done to honor and cherish ourselves, no matter who today's bosses may be. Our passion and love for ourselves that must at last unite and free us, as we put our sacrificed beloveds to rest in our profound and ample caring, broad, ever moving, and holy as the sea.